Maya Thompson was a woman who believed in working hard and staying out of the spotlight. She had always been quiet, not the type to draw attention to herself. From a young age, she had learned that success didn't come easily, but Maya was determined. She worked long hours, sacrificed her free time, and focused all her energy on her career as a researcher. It was a path that required dedication and persistence, and Maya had both. After years of effort, Maya finally reached a point where she was able to afford the luxury of flying first class. She was excited to board the flight to London, a place she'd always wanted to visit. As she entered the airplane, she felt a sense of accomplishment. It wasn't just about the seat, but what the seat represented. The years of hard work, the late nights in the lab, and the countless sacrifices she had made to get to this point. She found her seat in first class and settled in, taking a deep breath. It felt good to relax, even if only for a few hours. Maya was proud of what she had achieved, but she was also the kind of person who kept things to herself. She didn't want attention. She just wanted peace and quiet, a little time to unwind before the flight. But as Maya sat there, she noticed something strange. A flight attendant was looking at her from the aisle. Her eyes narrowed. It wasn't a friendly look. The woman seemed unsure about something. Maya smiled politely, but the attendant didn't smile back. Instead, the attendant walked over and asked Maya to show her boarding pass. At first, Maya was confused. She had already scanned her ticket when she boarded, but she calmly pulled out the boarding pass and handed it over. The attendant looked at it for a moment, then looked back at Maya. She shook her head. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but you don't belong in this seat," the flight attendant said. Maya blinked in surprise. "Excuse me?" she asked, her voice calm but firm. The attendant pointed to the seat next to hers. "This is a first-class seat, but you must have made a mistake. I'll have to ask you to move." Maya was shocked. The seat was hers. It was clearly marked on her boarding pass, but the flight attendant didn't seem to care about the ticket. She just stood there, staring at Maya with doubt in her eyes. Maya could feel a wave of embarrassment washing over her. She had done nothing wrong, but in that moment, it felt as though the world was telling her she didn't belong. Maya hesitated for a moment, unsure of what to do. She looked around the cabin, but no one seemed to notice the interaction. The other passengers were busy, talking, reading, or settling in. They weren't paying attention to what was happening between her and the flight attendant. She could have argued, but Maya wasn't the type to make a scene. She had always preferred to keep things peaceful, to avoid conflict when possible. "I'm sorry, but I really do belong here," Maya said softly. "This is my seat." The attendant looked at the boarding pass again and then back at Maya, still unsure. "I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you to leave, ma'am." Maya felt her heart sink. She couldn't believe what was happening. She had worked so hard for this moment, and now she was being told to leave, to walk away from the seat she had earned. It didn't make sense, and yet it was happening. Instead of raising her voice or fighting back, Maya quietly stood up, gathered her things, and walked down the aisle. She could feel the eyes of some of the passengers on her, but no one said a word. She didn't look at them. She kept her head down, trying to hold back the tears that were threatening to come. Maya didn't want to cry, not in front of everyone, but it was hard to hold it all inside. She had worked so hard, only to be told that she wasn't worthy of what she had earned. When Maya reached the back of the plane, the flight attendant had already turned away. Maya sat in the empty seat in coach, her heart heavy. The seat was not as comfortable as first class, and it felt far too far from the front of the plane. But it wasn't the seat that hurt. It was the feeling of being rejected for no reason, other than the color of her skin. She had known that this kind of thing happened to people, but she had never thought it would happen to her. As Maya sat there, her hands trembling, she couldn't help but think about how unfair life could be. She had worked so hard to get where she was, and yet she was being treated as though she didn't belong. It was hard to make sense of it. The tears finally came, but she quickly wiped them away, not wanting anyone to see. She didn't want pity. She didn't want to be the person who drew attention to herself, so she sat there quietly, staring out the window, trying to calm her racing thoughts. Meanwhile, the video of the incident had already been shared by a passenger who had filmed it on their phone. It spread like wildfire across the internet, reaching thousands of people within hours. People were upset. They were angry. They couldn't believe what had happened. Many of them reached out, offering support to Maya, even though they didn't know her. They could see the injustice and they wanted to do something about it. But Maya didn't see the video. She didn't see the comments, the messages, or the support. She just sat quietly in the back of the plane, feeling a mixture of sadness and confusion. She had always believed that kindness and hard work would be enough. But now, it felt like the world was telling her otherwise. For Maya, this moment was more than just a bad experience. It was a turning point. She had always believed that if she kept her head down and did the right thing, things would work out. But in that moment, she realized that sometimes the world doesn't treat you the way you deserve. And sometimes, that's the hardest lesson to learn. The end. Message of hope. Even when life feels unfair, we find strength in resilience. Sometimes, the hardest moments are the ones that shape us the most. Maya Thompson had always been someone people underestimated. Growing up in a small village in England, she had learned early on that the world wasn't always kind to people like her. She was quiet, determined, and focused, but she also faced challenges that others didn't seem to notice. Her family didn't have much money, and as a young girl, Maya was often told that people like her didn't belong in certain places. The idea that someone from her background could become a scientist seemed impossible to many. They told her that girls like her didn't belong in science, that people like her wouldn't get the same chances as others. But Maya didn't listen to those voices. She didn't let their doubts stop her. Instead, she worked harder. While other kids played outside, she stayed inside reading books and studying late into the night. She was determined to prove everyone wrong. She believed that if she worked hard enough, she could achieve anything. The more people doubted her, the more determined she became. Maya often found herself in the school library, her nose buried in textbooks, learning as much as she could. Her teachers saw something in her, though. They saw her hard work and her curiosity. One teacher, Mr. Johnson, encouraged her to keep pushing forward, even when Maya felt like giving up. "You have a gift, Maya," he would say. "Don't let anyone tell you that you can't do something." Those words stuck with her through the years. When Maya graduated high school, she faced another challenge. She wanted to go to university, but her family didn't have the money to support her. She applied for scholarships and worked part-time jobs to save up enough money to attend. There were days when she felt exhausted, wondering if it was all worth it. But she kept going. She knew that if she gave up now, all the years of hard work would have been for nothing. Finally, after years of struggle and sacrifice, Maya got into university. It wasn't easy, but she was determined to make the most of the opportunity. Her fellow students didn't always understand her drive. Many of them came from families that could afford to send them to school without the worry of finances. They didn't have to work late hours in the library or juggle jobs while studying. Maya had to fight for every grade, every chance to prove herself. But she didn't mind. She was used to being underestimated, and she knew that she was capable of more than what others saw. As she worked through her studies, Maya discovered her passion for medicine. She became fascinated by the human body and how it worked. She decided to pursue a degree in biomedical science, focusing on research that could change lives. The more she learned, the more determined she became to make a difference in the world. She dreamed of developing treatments for diseases, of using her knowledge to help people who were suffering. After graduating, Maya started working at a research lab. She was one of the only women in her department, and one of the only people of her background. But again, she didn't let that stop her. She worked long hours, often staying in the lab late into the night, reading, testing, and researching. Her colleagues were surprised by how much she knew and how quickly she could solve problems. They were used to seeing her as quiet and reserved, but Maya's work spoke for itself. Over the years, Maya became known in her field. She was a key contributor to the development of life-saving vaccines, and she had helped in several medical breakthroughs. But despite all of her success, very few people knew her name. She wasn't interested in fame or recognition. What mattered to her was the work, the difference she was making in the world. Maya was content to stay out of the spotlight. She didn't need praise or awards. She just wanted to know that her research was helping others. Maya's life wasn't without its challenges. She often felt lonely, especially during the late nights when she worked alone in the lab. She missed having a family to support her, someone to share her successes and failures with. But she didn't let loneliness stop her. She kept pushing forward because she knew that her work could change the world. She wanted to leave a legacy of kindness and science, to show people that anything was possible if they worked hard enough. But when the incident on the airplane happened, Maya's life changed in ways she couldn't have predicted. The video of her being removed from first class went viral. At first, Maya didn't want to watch it. She didn't want to relive the moment. But as the video spread across the internet, something strange started to happen. People were sharing it, and many of them were angry. They couldn't believe what had happened to her. They couldn't believe that someone like Maya, a respected scientist, had been treated that way. What Maya hadn't expected was that the video would bring attention to her work. As more and more people watched the video, they started looking into who she was. They found out about her research, about the vaccines she had helped create, and about the quiet dedication she had shown in her career. Maya's story became one of resilience. People who had never heard of her before now knew about her struggles, her hard work, and her quiet strength. The video, though painful for Maya to watch, brought something unexpected, a new sense of respect. People saw her not just as a woman who had been mistreated on a plane, but as someone who had worked tirelessly to make the world a better place. They saw the quiet strength that she had always carried with her, even when no one was looking. Maya didn't seek attention. She wasn't interested in fame or recognition, but something in her story touched people. They saw how she had overcome so much to get where she was, how she had never given up, even when others doubted her. And in a world that often feels divided, Maya's story became a symbol of hope, a reminder that even in the face of injustice, resilience and determination can lead to change. Maya had always been underestimated, but now people saw her for who she truly was. A woman of strength, grace, and intelligence. The video had shown the world what they hadn't known before, the quiet power of Maya Thompson. The Andouille. Message of hope. Even when the world doesn't see your worth, keep going. Your work, your resilience, and your heart will speak for you. As the video of Maya's removal from first class spread, it didn't just capture the attention of people who knew her story. It reached thousands, even millions, of people who had never heard her name before. The video sparked something inside them, something that made them feel angry and upset. They couldn't believe what they had seen. People were asking, why did this happen, and how could someone treat another person this way? Soon, the hashtag #ArcJusticeForMaya began trending on social media. It was shared by celebrities, activists, and even regular people who had never met her but felt the injustice. Some of Maya's friends shared the story, and others added their voices in support. Each post, each tweet, was another call for justice. The video showed Maya quietly walking to the back of the plane, holding back tears, but it was the power of her quiet dignity that moved people. The world was beginning to see that this wasn't just about a seat on a plane. It was about respect, about standing up against unfair treatment. Despite all the attention, Maya wasn't interested in fighting. She wasn't angry, and she didn't want to get caught up in the drama. For her, the story wasn't about revenge or making the airline pay for what had happened. She had been through so much in her life already, and the last thing she wanted was to add more conflict. She had spent so many years proving herself in a world that often ignored her. Maya wasn't about to let this one moment define her. But the public's reaction made her realize something important. Her silence, her quiet strength, was louder than any words she could speak. As more people shared the video, something unexpected happened. A news outlet discovered her identity. At first, Maya wasn't sure how she felt about it. She had always been the kind of person who stayed in the background, working hard without wanting attention. But when the news came out, people started to learn more about who she really was. They discovered that she wasn't just the woman kicked off a plane. She was a respected scientist, a person who had spent years working on important research that had changed lives. Maya had been involved in developing vaccines that saved thousands of lives. She had worked quietly, never seeking recognition, always focused on the goal, making a difference. As soon as people learned this, they were stunned. They couldn't believe that someone with so much to offer, someone who had made such a positive impact in the world, was treated this way. The fact that Maya was a scientist, someone who had dedicated her life to helping others, made the situation feel even more unjust. People were outraged. They couldn't understand why the airline had treated her so poorly, especially when she had earned that seat through hard work. Maya's story became more than just a story about a single incident. It was a story about how the world often overlooked the quiet achievers, the ones who worked in the background, making a difference without seeking praise. It was a reminder of the power of kindness and how sometimes the best people are the ones you never hear about. And now, because of a single video, Maya was no longer invisible. Her work, her dedication, and her quiet strength were being recognized by the world. As the support for Maya grew, the pressure on the airline increased. The company was forced to respond to the growing public outcry. They issued a public apology, but it felt empty. Maya didn't need their apology. She wasn't interested in their words. What she had found was something much more powerful than an apology, the power of people standing together for what was right. The airline's response didn't satisfy the public. The apology felt like a way to cover up the damage, but people weren't fooled. The airline's treatment of Maya wasn't just about one incident. It was about the bigger picture, about how people in power sometimes think they can treat others however they want, without consequences. But Maya's story had sparked something. It had sparked a conversation about fairness, about respect, and about standing up for others, even when it's hard. The support for Maya continued to grow. People shared their own stories of being underestimated or mistreated. They rallied together, showing that this was not just about one person. It was about all of them. They were standing together, not just for Maya, but for anyone who had ever been made to feel like they didn't belong. The message was clear. No one should be treated the way Maya had been treated, and it was time for things to change. Maya didn't want to be a symbol of resistance, but in a way, that's exactly what she became. Her calm and quiet dignity in the face of such unfair treatment had shown people that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is stay true to who you are. Maya hadn't fought back with words or anger. She hadn't tried to get revenge. Instead, she had remained true to herself, and in doing so, she had sparked a movement. The more people spoke out in support of Maya, the more pressure mounted on the airline. People were no longer just angry about the incident. They were holding the company accountable. They were demanding real change, not just an apology. They wanted to see the airline make things right, not just for Maya, but for everyone who had been treated unfairly. The power of unity, of people coming together. To fight for what was right was undeniable. In the end, Maya had found something stronger than any apology or compensation. She had found the strength of the people standing with her. The attention, the support, and the message were louder than anything she could have said herself. The spark that had started with a simple video had ignited a fire that would continue to burn, reminding everyone that standing up for what's right matters. The end. Message of hope. Sometimes, it takes a single spark to ignite a movement. When people stand together for what's right, they can change the world. The apology from the airline did not bring the resolution people had hoped for. It didn't fix the damage that had been done. In fact, the apology only marked the beginning of something much bigger. The ripple effect of Maya's story continued to spread, and it was becoming clear that the consequences of the airline's actions were far-reaching. As the story gained more attention, the public's outrage only grew. People were not satisfied with an apology. They wanted to see real change. The airline, which had once been a respected name in the industry, now found itself under intense scrutiny. The viral video, combined with the widespread support for Maya, had sparked a movement that no one could have predicted. What started as a simple incident on a plane had now become a symbol of justice, and it was having an impact far beyond what anyone could have imagined. The most obvious sign of the airline's troubles came when its stock started to drop. It was a slow decline at first, but it quickly gathered pace. Investors, once confident in the airline's future, began pulling their money. The confidence in the company had been shattered, and it wasn't just the public who was upset, it was the people who had a financial stake in the airline's success. The stock market didn't lie, and the airline's market value plummeted with each passing hour. But it wasn't just investors who were walking away. Companies that had long been partners with the airline began to distance themselves. Major corporations whose logos had once proudly appeared alongside the airline's advertisements now found themselves under pressure from their own customers and employees. They didn't want to be associated with a company that had treated a woman like Maya so unfairly. Business relationships that had taken years to build started to crumble. The pressure was mounting, and it seemed like the airline was on the edge of a full-blown crisis. Then, just when it seemed like things couldn't get worse, something unexpected happened. A major healthcare company, one that Maya had worked with in the past, publicly announced that they were cutting ties with the airline. They stated that the decision was a direct result of how the airline had treated a respected professional. This was no ordinary company. They had been closely involved with Maya's research and had partnered with her on several important medical projects. To have their support removed so suddenly sent a clear message to the public. The airline was not just facing criticism from the general public, it was now facing a loss of credibility in industries that depended on trust and professionalism. Within 48 hours, the financial impact was devastating. The airline had lost over $550 million in market value. The figures were staggering, and the company's board of directors knew they couldn't ignore the damage any longer. The weight of the situation finally hit home. People were watching, and they were not just angry, they were holding the airline accountable for its actions. In the aftermath of the crisis, the CEO of the airline made the decision to resign. It was a move that shocked many. The resignation wasn't just about one bad decision, but about the larger failure to manage the company's reputation. The airline's leaders had been blind to the growing backlash, and they had failed to respond appropriately to the public's outrage. The resignation was seen as a necessary step to try to restore some faith in the airline. But it didn't fix the damage. The public didn't trust the company anymore, and it would take years to rebuild that trust if it was even possible. But that wasn't all. The flight attendant who had kicked Maya out of first class was also fired. It wasn't the kind of action Maya had expected, but it showed the airline was taking some form of responsibility. The attendant had made a decision that no one in the company had supported. Maya had done nothing wrong, and yet she had been humiliated. The firing of the attendant seemed to be the airline's way of showing that they understood the seriousness of the situation, even if it was too little, too late. Despite the consequences that the airline was now facing, Maya didn't take any of the credit. She didn't want revenge. She had never sought attention or a fight. What mattered to her was something much simpler, the idea that actions have consequences. Maya's quiet strength, her dignity in the face of such unfairness, had set off a chain reaction that no one had expected. She wasn't proud of the airline's downfall, but she was proud of the message it sent. Her story had opened people's eyes to the importance of standing up for what's right, even when it's difficult. What Maya hadn't anticipated was how much of an impact one small act of injustice could have. She had always believed in quietly doing the right thing, in working hard without asking for recognition. She never imagined that her personal struggle would turn into a movement, but she soon realized that her resilience had become something bigger than herself. It wasn't just her story anymore. It was the story of so many others who had been treated unfairly, of people who had been overlooked and dismissed. The collapse of the airline wasn't about destroying a company. It was about sending a message that injustice would not go unnoticed. Maya didn't need revenge or accolades. What she had found was a deeper truth. When people come together to fight for what's right, real change can happen. The world had seen what happened to her, and it had chosen to stand with her. And in the end, that was the most powerful victory of all. The end. Message of hope. Sometimes the strongest actions are the ones taken quietly, with dignity and grace. Your voice, even when soft, can inspire change when you stand for what's right.